Welcome to this explainer. Okay, imagine an entire country's destiny completely rewritten in just 6 years. That's exactly what we're looking at today. We're going to explore how England went from a stable Anglo-Saxon kingdom to experiencing a complete Norman conquest that transformed the nation forever. It is an incredibly fast, highly dramatic period of history, and it's absolutely crucial for your GCSEs. So here is our exact roadmap for today. First, we'll look at Anglo-Saxon government, economy, and society. Then we hit the succession crisis. Third, we break down the rival claimants. And finally, we'll tackle the Norman invasion itself. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Anglo-Saxon Government, Economy, and Society. Now, before you can truly understand the Norman conquest, we have to understand the remarkably sophisticated state that was actually being conquered in the first place. To start, let's look at the concept of earldoms. Now, it's really easy to assume that 11th century England was just some weak, fragmented kingdom waiting to collapse, but that's actually totally wrong. The English monarchy in 1060 was genuinely powerful and highly organized. Power was delegated through these earldoms. Think of them as massive units of local government run by powerful nobles. And working right alongside this was a highly established legal system. So together, they gave England a level of administrative sophistication that was actually pretty rare for its time. Beyond just government, we've got to look at the economy and society. England's wealth was built heavily on its thriving towns and villages. It had a deeply functioning, really efficient economic system, and this combination created a highly attractive economic prize. Make no mistake, this incredible wealth is exactly why William of Normandy wanted to conquer it so badly in the first place. Add to this the enormous, overarching influence of the church, which didn't just shape spiritual life, but practically dictated local government and landholding across the whole country.
So, here's a massive piece of insider advice directly for you. Do not treat Anglo-Saxon England as just some quick footnote before the real story of 1066 begins. In your exams, examiners specifically want to see that you understand this was a highly sophisticated, functioning state. That is exactly what makes its total collapse and the ensuing conquest so historically significant. Moving on to Section 2, the last years of Edward the Confessor and the succession crisis. Let's see how all of this builds into a massive crisis, focusing on the key players and the spark that lit the fuse. Look at this incredible primary source detail from the Bayeux Tapestry. Seated right here is King Edward the Confessor. Now, his death in January 1066 is the absolute root cause of everything that follows in this topic. Why? Well, because he died leaving absolutely no clear, undisputed heir to take the throne. And in medieval Europe, a king dying without an heir is basically a recipe for disaster. But before Edward even dies, we have to talk about the single most powerful family in England, the House of Godwin. The head of this family, Harald Godwinson, becomes the Earl of Wessex. This specific title makes him the most powerful nobleman in the entire kingdom, literally second only to King Edward himself. However, domestic politics were super fragile. There was a major violent rising against Harold's own brother, Tostig, which actually led to Tostig being exiled. This is a crucial sign that even within the almighty Godwin family, complete political unity just wasn't guaranteed. Now, what's really interesting here is how Harold's position gets incredibly complicated. This scene shows a highly controversial embassy that Harold made to Normandy. Now, historians genuinely debate the exact purpose and outcome of this journey, but as you can see depicted here, Harold is swearing an oath on holy relics to William, the Duke of Normandy. Later on, Norman sources aggressively used this very disputed oath to claim that Harold had officially promised to support William's claim to the English throne. Before we move to the next part, here is an essential reminder. This succession crisis didn't explode into an all-out war just because King Edward died. The crisis exploded because multiple, highly powerful, and very plausible claimants existed simultaneously. You had several powerful men with genuinely arguable cases for the crown all stepping up at the exact same time. Which brings us to Section 3, the rival claimants for the throne. Let's systematically lay out exactly who these powerful men were and look at the immediate military fallout. Okay, let's meet our contenders. Here's a clear comparison of our three main rival claimants. First up, William of Normandy. His claim basically rested on the argument that Edward had promised him the throne and that Harold's sacred oath bound him to support William. Second, we have Harald Hardrada, the fearsome king of Norway. He based his claim on old agreements made between earlier English and Scandinavian rulers. And third, we have Edgar the Eighthling. Now, on paper, Edgar actually had the strongest hereditary bloodline, but he was young, inexperienced, and entirely lacked the military and political backing required to actually seize power. You definitely want to memorize the specific foundation of each man's argument. It's absolutely key for your exams.
But despite those powerful rival claims looming over him, Harold Godwinson acts incredibly decisively, as you can see illustrated here. He manages to secure the backing of the Witan, which is the vital council of English nobles, and he is crowned King of England almost immediately after Edward's death. I mean, he does not wait around at all.
But taking the crown is one thing, right? Keeping it is a whole different story. Look at the rapid, utterly exhausting pace of events on this timeline. Early 1066. Edward dies, and Harold is crowned. But then the military tests begin immediately with the northern invasions. Harald Hardrada invades, and at the Battle of Gate Fulford, the local English earls suffer a significant defeat, severely weakening northern resistance. King Harold responds incredibly fast. He force-marches his army all the way north and achieves a massive, decisive victory at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, killing Hardrada and completely destroying the Norwegian threat.
Time for another crucial piece of advice. Stamford Bridge matters enormously. Please do not skip it in your revision. Harold's forced march north and the sheer brutal exhaustion of fighting and winning that battle directly weakens his army for the massive, pivotal challenge that is about to arrive down in the south.
And that brings us to Section 4, the Norman invasion. This is the final and most critical module of this explainer, focusing on the decisive clash on October 14th, 1066. So almost immediately after Stamford Bridge, Harold gets the terrifying news that William has landed in the south. He now has to march his already exhausted, battered troops all the way back down the length of England. And this visual brilliantly illustrates the tactical matchup at the Battle of Hastings. Notice the stark visual contrast. You have William's dynamic, mounted cavalry charging head-on into Harold's largely static, infantry-based Anglo-Saxon shield wall.
So, the big question, why did William win? This is literally the single most important analytical point of the entire topic. We can break it down into 4 distinct categories. First, leadership skills. Both men showed real tactical skills, so it's not just a simple case of one being a better leader. Second, troops and tactics. William's cavalry and archers gave him dynamic tactical options that a static infantry shield wall simply couldn't match once it began to break apart. Third, timing and exhaustion. Remember, Harold's army had just fought a brutal battle and marched hundreds of miles in a matter of days, while the Norman army was completely fresh. And fourth, fortune and circumstance, which leads us directly to the decisive moment of the entire war.
Draw your eyes to this famous, incredibly violent scene from the primary source. This is the critical turning point, the death of King Harold himself partway through the battle. When the king fell, it completely shattered English morale and utterly destroyed their cohesion. The famous shield wall dissolved, and the battle was definitively lost. As we wrap up, I want to give you a final, essential reminder for your exams. Never, ever give a single factor for William's victory. You absolutely must structure your answers by category. Weigh the leadership, the troops and tactics, and the crucial circumstances of timing and fortune together. Don't just write a blow-by-blow narrative of the battle. Examiners want to see a structured, thoughtful analysis. And to help you nail that, I am leaving this exact exam practice question on the screen for you. Explain why William, Duke of Normandy, won the Battle of Hastings. Challenge yourself to apply the structured categories we've just covered to secure those top marks. It is wild to think that a whole kingdom's destiny was rewritten in just 6 years and ultimately decided in a single bloody afternoon. If a nation's entire history can turn on a dime like it did at Hastings, what other massive turning points in history are hanging by a mere thread? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.